Many doubted we'd ever see it, but here it is. The return to glory.
McDavid stops up. What a move. Shoots. Scores!
Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Outsiders. Bryn Griffiths along with Robin Brownlee. And here we go again, another week. And this is going to be a lot of fun today, Robin.
Absolutely. We've got the Grey Cup bash in the rearview mirror. And we got Craig MacTavish and Gerry Forbes coming up.
Yep.
Going to be good.
It's going to be a blast, and we'll get to those two gentlemen coming up in a little bit. Let's quickly talk about the Grey Cup Festival in Calgary. All indications are that it was another smash success. We talked with Dwayne Vigneault last week, and he's been involved with numerous ones in Edmonton and the Canadian Football League. Decided to hire him on, and now his job is to take the party from city to city to city based on what they did in Edmonton a year ago. And in Calgary, it just sounded like it went spectacularly well. And we'll get to Gerry Forbes, who's a longtime radio personality in Calgary, coming up in a little bit. And he can kind of give us a bit of a breakdown on that. Plus, we got to talk about the game. The Hamilton Tiger Cats were the best team during the regular season, but they did not win it. They were absolutely manhandled or mauled, I guess, by a Winnipeg Blue Bomber team that the midway point of the season, Robin, I wasn't sure what was going to happen with those guys. Matt Nichols go down with the injury, and then you have Strevler, and then you have Kolaris basically kind of come out of nowhere, and they are able to gain a little bit of momentum down the stretch. And then not only did they went into Calgary in the Western semifinal, beat the Stampeders there, and then had to go into Mosaic in Regina and beat the heavily favored Saskatchewan Roughriders there, and then they had to take on the team that was the best during the regular season, and they did it. They are full value for winning this year's Stanley Cup Championship, and the first one in 29 years.
Well, that was an ass-kicking that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. You and I talked leading up to this game. The heart kind of said, well, it would be nice if the Bombers could win, but you know, the Ticats are the best team. They're a 15-3 team. I had the Ticats. I can't think of one person that said, I've got the Bombers by 3 touchdowns. Not even 2. Most people kind of, hardcore Bombers fans, I think we can find a way, hoping against hope. But that was as one-sided a game as I've seen in a long time. It started badly for the Ticats. And the Bombers, a couple of things there, and we'll certainly touch on this. The Andrew Harris thing, to me, regardless of what you thought about what happened earlier in the season, cheater this or cheater that, he came out and he played pissed off, and he ran over people, around people, and through people. And when you had that, and you had Kolaris pulling the levers like he was back there, it just looked like a team that wasn't going to get beat by anybody on that particular day. And I'm stunned by the result because it was not close.
I had a game plan going into this, and that was I'm going to watch the first half of the Grey Cup game. Then I'm going to watch the halftime show because I'll be fascinated to see what kind of performance Keith Urban would put on. And it was a much talked about selection as a halftime performance. We'll get to that in a second as well. And then if the game was maybe just a little lopsided, I would flip over and watch the Edmonton Oilers take on the Coyotes in Arizona. I knew midway through the first half that I was going to be flipping over full time to the hockey game because I'm with you. It was a nasty first quarter. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers set the tone defensively and offensively, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats were down on the mat before you even knew what happened. And I'm like you, I was very shocked and very surprised. Hamilton, the previous week in the Eastern Final, did the exact same thing to the Edmonton Eskimos, came out and took it to them early, and the Eskimos really never recovered from that. But full marks to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I just was so impressed. I've really been impressed with how they handled the season. And I have a lot of friends in Winnipeg, and that's a long time to go between Grey Cup victories, 29 years, and I'm very happy for everybody there. They haven't had a lot to cheer for in Winnipeg over the last few years with their Blue Bombers, and the same with the Jets. And, I guess the biggest thing they've had to cheer for over the last 29 years is getting their hockey team back. So I was very, very pleased to see what happened. The other thing, too, a lot of conversation about the halftime show. Some people actually thought when it was announced, and it was announced in the same week, that the Super Bowl halftime show was going to feature J-Lo and I can't even remember the other performer. I've gone blank, but whatever. And the same time, Keith Urban was announced as the halftime show for the CFL. A lot of people believe, and I'm not one of them, a lot of people believe that halftime show has to be a Canadian performer. And I'm thinking, I think if you want to be big, you got to think big. And they went out and got a performer. Keith Urban is a big-time performer. He put on a big-time show, and I'll tell you right now, I bet you the TV ratings, even though the game was a blowout, Robin, the show he put on at halftime was fantastic. It was really solid. And I have friends in the U.S. who said, wow, you guys had Keith Urban on your halftime show? That's taking it up a notch. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't see the need, there's the Canadian content thing and the thought by many people, and they're welcome to their opinion. I don't want a Canadian artist, with all respect to the past, and there's been a lot of terrific bands and performers. I don't want somebody who hasn't had a hit in 25 years dragging themselves up on stage and playing one for the old times.
Well, I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
You want Trooper, do you?
I like Trooper.
I do too, but Keith Urban is way bigger and way better than Trooper at this point in their careers. I'm with you. I'm not actually a Keith Urban fan. I don't dislike the guy. It's just not my genre. He's good at what he does, but that's world class. So, yeah, I thought it was fine. I watched it. Again, not a big fan, but I was tapping my toe. I liked it. I'm sure there's some young performers out there that would come in under that 20 to 25 year no-hit embargo that I talked about, but not that many that are A, available, and B, as recognizable as Keith Urban. So I'm all for it. It was fine.
And he seemed enthusiastic about being here for the event too, which I kind of like. And he actually was in the booth with the boys from TSN, and everybody said, it was a bit awkward. And I'm thinking, you know what? Good on him for at least going up to the booth and talking a little football and having a little bit of fun. I caught that, I think, during one of the intermissions in the hockey game. But for the most part, I just think that it sounded like the whole festival went well. The game was a bit of a blowout, but that happens.
Yeah, you know what? You mentioned it off the top, Bryn. The committee and the people that pulled the show off here in Edmonton last year did a terrific job. A lot of them went down to Calgary, and from everything I've heard, it was a big success. And the party's part of it, the event is part of it. So good for them. Keith Urban was fine. Hey, the thing that you could easily turn away from more than anything else was the actual game, because it wasn't close. So, but that's how it goes. Good for the Bombers. That's a good sports town. You've got your ties there, Bryn. I was, with my heart, I thought Bombers. With my head, I thought Ticats. So I'm happy with that result. They've waited a long time.
And one final thing to touch on again, and we talked last week with Dwayne Vigneault about this, is that, there were some Edmonton people involved in this, but this was still a Calgary committee that put this event on. Every city will have their own committee, but they have this league influence now and saying, we can be bigger than this. We can be bigger. And I think the Canadian Football League, that's a huge step in the right direction for a league that needs to take it up about 4 or 5 notches in the marketing department. So thumbs up from me, and it sounds like a thumbs up from you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk. We watched a hockey game on Sunday night between the Arizona Coyotes and the Edmonton Oilers, the top 2 teams in the Pacific. And it was the night before the Oilers had played in Vegas, and that was a heavy, heavy game. And it was a huge win for the Edmonton Oilers. They really did grind down the Golden Knights. But then they have to have something left to take on Arizona, who's a heavy checking team as well. and they found a way to get a win in a shootout over the Coyotes. The Edmonton Oilers have got to be very pleased with the way this road trip has gone thus far, heading into a game Wednesday in Colorado to wrap it up.
Oh, absolutely. The thing that Dave Tippett has managed, Dave Tippett and the roster, the players play the game, obviously. If they have a bad outing, you're not always going to win. You're going to play well, and sometimes you just lose. But if you have a bad outing, what you don't want to do is spiral out of control where a loss becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. This team has not done that this year, even on this road trip, which is against tough Pacific Division opponents, and is going to go a long way to, where they finish in the Western Conference. There's a lot of road left, as they say, but this is one of those road trips where all the games matter. You're not playing Eastern teams. And when they gave up the 2 quickies, I thought they were going to lose that game last night. Then they come back late, then they win it in the shootout. So far, they have found a way to bounce back and not stay in the ditch very long, and that's how you become a contender.
They have been very resilient this season. Yep. In the past, they've been fragile. Mm-hmm. Let's go from resilience to fragility.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Calgary Flames, who, after getting absolutely crushed in St. Louis 6-0, purely by accident, their plane wasn't ready to take them away after that game, so they had to overnight in St. Louis. But what it did do, it gave them an opportunity. They started right after the game with a closed-door players-only meeting, and then it carried over to the hotel afterwards because they now were staying a surprise night in St. Louis. And I thought they came up with a pretty solid effort in their next matchup. We've talked about this now for weeks about what is going on there. And David Riddick has been great in goal, almost too great. He's kept them in some games that maybe they should have got blown out earlier. But Sean Monahan for me, Johnny Gaudreau for me, have just been not quite on their game. I saw signs of them starting to come out of it a little bit in the game in Philadelphia where they won. So they got to pick it up a few notches because we're getting close to that all-important or the. Are you a big believer in the U.S. Thanksgiving thing?
No.
This is the week.
I'm not a big believer in it, and I would suggest the St. Louis Blues aren't a big believer.
But they're
in it
a rarity. That does not happen very often.
True. You know what? I don't know what's wrong down in Calgary. This is a better team than what they look like in the standings. Oh. So you really got to know what's going on. You can look at points totals. You can look at highlights. I don't see all their games. I do know I was writing a piece for Oilers Nation on the weekend about the ridiculous point totals that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl have.
Right.
They are number 1, their combined points by a mile. I want to say they were going into last night's game 94. I was adding up, and then Marchand and Pasternak in Boston are second, and they're like at 77 or 78, so they're quite a bit behind. I looked at the Calgary roster, and it was Gaudreau and I forget off the top of my head, they were at like 39.
I know.
Combined, the top 2 guys. When cliche time, when your best guys aren't your best guys, and for scorers, that means something on the score sheet. Not, well, we played a good game, but we didn't score. You can't win if your top end is not top end.
Also been a little sloppy at the back end as well. And when you're giving up on the giveaway takeaway thing, it's been a bit of a disaster for the Flames. But I'm with you. I think they've got the talent to get it turned around. I think that they will over time. But the problem right now is the Pack's pulling away a little bit. I think they're 10 points back of the Edmonton Oilers at this point as we get closer to this U.S. Thanksgiving mark. The Oilers now pretty much, if they can win 2 games, lose 1. 2 games, win, lose 1. 2 games, they'll be in the postseason. Anyway, we'll be talking a lot about hockey through the winter months here. Let's tell everybody what's coming up in a couple of moments. We're going to chat with Craig MacTavish, who he left Edmonton and went over to Russia for a stint and coaching in the Continental Hockey League. Didn't work out very well for him. We'll touch on that. Also, we will touch on some other things. You and I have a lot of questions. We've known Craig for a very, very long time. So I think that now we've had a little bit of breathing space from when he was here with the Edmonton Oilers. We can maybe address those questions. So we'll get to that with Craig.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Mac was the coach for most of my years on the beat. I always thought him to be a very sharp guy, an astute guy, and I remember when it was time for him to go as a coach, that last game, walking out from the doors towards the bench, he looked so utterly beaten and defeated. It's burned into my mind. Craig MacTavish is the last guy to ever look defeated and get down. But it was a tough go. The team was bad. He knows the rules. When you're the coach and you're not winning.
You're in the win business.
After the high of getting to that 06 Cup final. But this guy is an Oiler through and through. There are real ties that bind there.
Through the good times and the bad times. We got to say that, because there's some bad times in there.
Absolutely. And from player to coach to manager, he's an interesting guy. You know him as well as I do, Bren. He went away. He went and coached in Chicago on his own.
Yep.
Went and did some more schooling. Went to the KHL. Now we've got the Spengler Cup. This is a guy, I said to Mac, when are you going to just relax? And he said, man, I got a lot of living to do. So that's Craig MacTavish.
And also we'll be chatting with Gerry Forbes. By the way, and Mac T, there's one question I've always wanted to ask him, and I'm going to ask it right at the end of the interview. It's been bugging me for years, this one question, and I never felt like there was really a time to ask this particular question. I'm going to ask it at the end of the interview. Okay, and Gerry Forbes, longtime broadcaster in Canada, great morning host and a great community guy, is going to join us from Calgary coming up. So let's get this baby going, okay?
Absolutely, man.
Craig MacTavish joins the Outsiders today. Thanks for coming on, and oh my God, you never stop.
Thanks for having me, by the way, you two Outsiders.
Okay, let's get right into this Spengler Cup thing. How did that come about?
Oh, I'd spoken with Sean Burke quite a while ago, and he was asking me about my level of interest. I said, absolutely, I'd be happy to help out in any capacity. Get back to me when you want to make the decision, and he did after a while, and I'm excited. I mean, as I told him, I would have rather assisted Wayne over there, but not understandably, Wayne passed, but would have been an unbelievable experience for everybody to have him over there involved with Hockey Canada again.
Well, Mac, you got another old friend and teammate with you in Paul Coffey as an assistant coach. Talk about that a little bit. Here's somebody you go back a lot of years with. That's probably going to be a fun working relationship as well.
Well, everybody that has been over there, and I've done it once before about 10 years ago, but everybody that's been over there at the Spengler will tell you it's maybe the best, or certainly one of the best experiences you can have in hockey. It's just the backdrop of the Swiss Alps, Christmas time, families around, lots of energy, lots of kids, and a world-class hockey tournament. So I think, all the elements are in place to have a great time. Certainly with Kopp there is going to help and certainly inspire our players. No, there's not a lot of players that have had more experience playing for Team Canada in big games. He's really passionate about Canadian hockey and working with Team Canada. So motivation is never a problem with these players, but there'll be some added motivation with Koff on the bench. And I'm looking forward to working with Misha Donskov from Vegas, who I don't know, but he's worked a lot with Team Canada in the past, and a guy that's got a lot of energy and a lot of capability. So I think I'm excited about the staff we have.
Mac, we'll touch on the Spengler Cup again, but I got a bigger picture question for you. And obviously, you were over in the KHL with Yaroslavl. That's another chapter we've got to touch on. But even broader than that, it's years zip by. I remember when you were still in New York, and I was talking to you about coming in to Edmonton and joining the staff here. There's a lot of water under the bridge since then. You come to Edmonton, you have that many years here, you have the cup run, you end up leaving Edmonton, you end up coming back to Edmonton, you go to Yaroslavl, now Spengler Cup. You've got, what's this coaching bug you've got? You could walk away if you wanted to and go sit by the lake and contemplate life, but you're still in the mix.
Well, I've got a lot of living to do, Robin. And, I guess I'm fortunate in respect to being in a position where I can choose to do things that I really want to do. And, I like the coaching. I really enjoyed working with the players in the KHL. It has had its challenges for sure, but overall it was a wonderful experience over there working with the players. I really enjoyed that part of it. And, it just dovetailed into going and coaching Canada at the Spengler. So it's going to be another great experience. And I'm looking forward to it, but I've always liked to stay busy, but I've not done a lot really, over the last, month and a half or 2 months. I've had, treated myself well, went on vacation. I've really enjoyed, going to the Oiler games. Got season tickets at the Oiler games, and, I didn't know how I'd react to going to the games, but I've loved it. It's a great experience, and certainly sitting down with the fans lower to the ice level gives you a much better perspective on the game. I think, when you watch the games from the press box, where you guys watch the games, or where we were watching the games from the eyebrow on the other side of the press box, you just lose so many of the important aspects of the game. And I've really enjoyed it. The Oilers have been great to watch. McDavid, obviously, and Draisaitl are just, amazing to watch. We're really lucky to be able to watch those two guys night in and night out, and they just continue to get better and more dominant. We're really, really fortunate to have both those guys, and a couple guys that I've seen this year that have really made a big difference. One would be Ethan Bear, for sure.
Yep.
That just the puck movement and the way he's played has really solidified the defense, and especially that pairing with Darnell. They've been really good from the games that I've seen. I haven't seen them all, but he's played. When you're in the minors, a lot of times you hear, and I believe it to be true, that playing in the NHL is sometimes, and in a lot of ways, easier than playing in the American Hockey League, because everything's more organized. The execution is at a better level, a greater level, and Ethan Bear can think the game and move the puck, and he's really in a lot of ways he's playing better here than he did last year in Bakersfield, and he was really good down there last year. So he's been good. Cassian, I like the grinders, and he really brings a lot for me. I enjoy him, but have really enjoyed watching the Oilers this year.
This is going to be a fun interview, because it's going to be just like having a coffee with you in the coach's room, because we're going to be all over the place. Because I was going to ask you a question about the K. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I got to ask you, so you're sitting in the crowd now watching these games. How is that? How is everybody in the section you're in?
They're awesome. They're great. I think, just great Oiler fans, very supportive. I mean, the team's been easy to support. I mean, I might not have wanted to be there last year, but no, they've been great. They're really respectful to me, and just have had a great time. I know everybody around the section around me, and I go to the game with my kids and my wife, and it's great entertainment.
Mac, you look back over all the years, and you've been in Edmonton for many of them. Fans here, now this might sound a bit odd because things haven't gone well for most of the last 13 years, but to have McDavid and Draisaitl now, and I think you can make a fair argument that if they aren't the best two players in the game, both of them are in the top 5 right now. To have that as a fan after you've seen Gretzky and fill in the blank after him, Messier or Coffey or Curry or any number of guys. I mean, there are fan bases that don't get two players like that to cheer for
ever
at the same time in an entire lifetime.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think all the success that the team had in the 80s and then another Stanley Cup in 1990, I mean, the pendulum in professional sports swings both ways. Mm-hmm. And we had a great run, and then we had a really lean run, painfully lean for everybody. But it's the pendulum swinging the other way now. That's what I see. And the best players normally win. And I mean, I'm really confident that I can't tell you the year, but I'm really confident that we're going to win again.
You mentioned Mark Messier a couple of seconds ago, Robin. You spent the weekend with Mess? Yeah,
we were at the Canada Walk of Fame.
Yes, and
it was a big gala dinner in Toronto, and Mark was inducted, and it was a great evening. An eclectic mix of inductees, some from sports. Frank Gerry.
Mr. Dressup. Mr. Dressup was inducted, was he not?
Mr. Dressup was inducted, too, which was amazing to me that he got his start working with Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
So, that was pretty cool. And Frank Gerry, the famous architect, Canadian, lives in L.A. now. I mean, he's an older gentleman. He's got to be, definitely mid to late 70s, early 80s, and, had tons of great accomplishments. He's done amazing things when you see his body of work. Didn't mention one thing about architecture. All he could talk about was pickup hockey in L.A. And Mark Messier, which was just the power of just what hockey means to Canadians. But he did not say one thing about anything that he did.
Wow.
But it was a great night. Will Arnett was inducted. He was hilarious. I mean, he's a funny guy. So, and the rock band Triumph.
Oh,
yeah.
So it was quite a night, but really befitting these great Canadians, and we were all happy to be there to be part of it with Mark.
I tell you, Mac, going back to this KHL thing, you've dabbled in a little bit of the media stuff before. You've done some analysis. You know how easy the game looks from up in the press box where all us clowns sit and criticize before you get too close to the game and everything speeds up. But the thing you did on the KHL that you wrote for TSN, I thought it was a real scream. And one of the things that stuck with me was one of your former players, Denis Grebishkov, giving you the word that you were going to get canned and that you wouldn't need to go to the rink anymore. That was great.
Yeah. No, Dennis, he's an awesome guy, really sharp guy, and really was a great asset for me over there. But, Dennis is, he's a kind-hearted soul. And so he would do the translation when I would meet with Yuri Yakovlev. And Yuri's a powerful man. Like he's got a real presence to him. He's not a big guy, but he's got a real presence. And then, Dennis, we'd get into it a little bit, and it started getting heated, and Dennis would have to translate this, which wouldn't be natural for him. And we'd go out of those meetings, and his armpits would be just so just being in the middle of that. But he was a terrific ass, a very bright guy. He's going to be a good coach, I think, over there, and did a wonderful job for us.
Mac, one of the things that a lot of Canadian hockey fans, when they take a look at the K, they're a little dismissive of it. But I got out of your article that you did on tsn.ca that was it a bit of an eye-opener for you, because it just sounded like in some ways it was much better than you thought, and maybe a couple of things disappointed you. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a good description of it. I think the individual skill level is high. The practices are really good. The passing isn't it anywhere close to being as good as it is at the NHL level. The pace is good. The atmosphere is every bit as good. I mean, the Russians are really passionate about their hockey. They're very supportive, I found. I would recommend it for hockey fans. I mean, it's hard to get a Russian visa. It's just time consuming. It's not that hard, but to go over and watch a game in St. Petersburg or Moscow, and if you're a hockey fan and want to get a look at a different style of hockey, it's well worth it for people to go over there and have a look.
Mac, Yaroslavl is a special place. We know what happened there back in 2011. I mean, as far as tragedies go, whether the sports world or otherwise, that's one of them. An entire team is lost. You had some people on that plane that you'd played with, Pavel Demitra, Brad McCrimmon, and Alexander Karpatsev. How did that strike you when you were there in the town? And it's been 8 years, but something like that has still got to be pretty prevalent.
Well, they really honor those players and those people that were lost that day. Like it's every year the team goes to the to the gravesite of the players that are there, and there's a big ceremony at the rink and outside the rink, and it's a really special day. And the Russians, I found to be have a lot of pride, and they have definitely the right perspective on keeping these people in the forefront. And it was nice. I felt gratified to be part of that this year, and it just things like that have a way of really lending perspective to your life, and I think that they Yaroslavl, the Locomotive, and Yuri Yakovlev in particular have done a great job keeping the memory of those players and those people that died on that plane in the forefront.
Greg, away from the politics of what happened over there, was it worth it for you? Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. I thought the facility I lived in was great, way better than I thought. It was, we all lived in the same area, the players, the coaches, and that was pretty much it in this big compound. Beautiful spa underneath, restaurant. They served 3 meals a day. The hockey was good. So, it was well worth it, I would say, Brent. Well worth it. Yeah.
Mac, I'm reading this one paragraph from your TSN piece. I don't know whether this was a survival tactic or not, but I quickly viewed the press conferences as me being trapped in a sitcom. I assigned Edmonton media names to our daily media. You got Halsey in there. You got Ryan Rashog, Joanne Ireland. What's that about?
Yeah, that's the truth. They were, I'm going, these are the same people. They're just speaking a different language. It was, and then Joanne, who I always thought she was quite a bit sharper than you guys.
Thank you.
But,
yes, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And had the best perspective on where sports fit in the spectrum of life. And, there was a lady there that reminded me of Joanne, and one guy that reminded me of Ryan. Ryan and I used to go at it a little bit in my early days, but he was crafting out a career for himself, and I get all that. But and there was an older gentleman that reminded me a bit of Halsey, but it was quite surreal. Quite surreal.
Well, I mean, you've done some work with TSN. You know that is that your mandate as part of Ryan Rashog's daily radio spot on the station, eh?
Yeah, he's. But I spoke with Ryan and I told him that I was going to do this, and he was awesome. He was great.
He
said, he was happy to take the brunt of it.
I want to go back a little bit further here. So you come to Edmonton through your playing career, and you walk into this unbelievable team, and you go through this incredible run as a player. All the way through that, were you thinking, gee, I'd like to try coaching, or I'd like to try being a general manager at some point? Because it worked out beautifully on the coaching front, taking the team all the way to the Cup final in 2006. But sometimes when guys are getting to the end of their career, they're already starting to think about that step. What was your process through that?
Oh, totally. I always had the last three contracts I did with Glenn. I always did my own contract, but I always had a coaching component to it. Glenn was, he was very supportive of me making the transition from player into assistant coach. And I'd always have, I've got a year of playing, and then I'd have another couple of years where I would start coaching in the last few contracts that I had. And then when I went to New York in 1994, it was, then that all kind of evaporated, and I continued to play for another 3 years, but and then got into it when I was done. So it gave me a leg up, I think, to start my coaching career, because the last really 4 or 5 years, I knew that's what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And I would assemble drills and tactics and techniques that I liked from the other coaches that I had. So I was smart enough to pay attention at that point.
Well, you talked even during your playing time with New York that, you and Kevin Lowe would talk about, hey, wouldn't it be nice one day if, and sure enough, you turn into a tandem here where you were teammates on the ice winning those cups. He takes over from Glenn in 2000 as GM. Right. You come in from New York. You'd been with Billy Moores in New York. He comes in, and you start that next chapter, where you had so much success as a player. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, and the first year we were here, we had Ted Green.
Yeah,
Green was an awesome coach and an unbelievable person. So everything just kind of worked out at that point. It made it easy to transition from being a player and going back to New York for a couple of years, and end up working with Colin Campbell and then John Muckler after that.
Right.
And then came to Edmonton and worked with Kevin, and then Glenn left, and everything just kind of fit together at that point.
I want to talk a little bit about 2006 and that run, because I vividly remember watching the Hemsky goal to knock off Detroit in that first round. And as I'm walking down from the press box of the locker room, I'm thinking to myself, I think I can feel there's that special magic about this. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And Dan Barnes and I talked about it a few times. Did you sense earlier than that maybe this is a chance we can take these guys and do some damage?
Detroit was so powerful.
Yeah.
That once we beat them, I thought we have a chance for sure. And I mean, Kevin made some unbelievable trades to really help the team going into the playoffs. Dwayne Rollison, obviously, but Spacek was a huge addition, as was Samsonov. And these guys, they scored huge goals for us at times.
Michael Pekka.
Yeah. Well, that was earlier when
with
we
the
had.
Pronger. Yeah.
We finally had a competitive advantage over everybody else, because all these other teams were way overspent to the cap that was just being brought in. And the Oilers, we had our own self-imposed budget, and we had the flexibility to add these guys. So it was a huge competitive advantage for us that Kevin leveraged extremely well when he got Pronger and Pekka. I mean, Pekka, it took him a while to fit in, but he that was a great line in the playoffs. But I mean, we had a competitive advantage to start. We had a really good team. I mean, that's before Corsi and so forth and stuff like that. But I'm sure our Corsi was very, very strong, because we carried the play most games. We didn't always win, but then we got Dwayne Rollison, and he was really the best player in every series till the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the only reason we beat Detroit. He was a lot better than Manny Legacy.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was really good.
And Samsonov, he set up the goal by Hemsky that Bryn talked about to put the Red Wings away. You also had the best defenseman who's probably played here in the last 20 years or so. Mac, when you guys got that shorty from Fernie and beat them, well, a couple things I remember. You at the bench giving it to the crowd, and when you came back here and waxed them 4-0, I was absolutely convinced that the team was going back to Raleigh, and this team, I was going to finally get to cover a Stanley Cup win after getting here for the 1990 Cup and doing a little bit of that. I thought you guys were a lock to win that. Now that you're years removed from that, Mac, when you look at that final game and I guess the opportunity lost, did it all swing with the Rollison injury? Because you still got to Game 7. It was right there for you.
No, that's a great question, and one that I haven't been asked before, but I contemplate a lot.
Right.
Because and to a certain extent it happened last year with Boston and St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you lose Game 6, so Boston goes back home and they go home satisfied. And we killed them in Game 6, as you mentioned. It was maybe the best game. Well, it was the best game we played all year. It was just men against boys. They didn't have a chance. We just smothered them. The crowd was wild. They didn't have, normally there's ebbs and flows and momentum changes and so forth in the game, but there weren't any. We carried it the whole game for 60 minutes.
Yep. But
we left satisfied, and satisfied that was enough. And they didn't leave satisfied.
Yeah.
They were desperate to get better. And, there's not much, there was nothing really that I was unhappy with in that game. But, there's a slight psychological advantage going into the next game because the other team knows they have to be better, and we're happy with what our best was. So I think that, that psychology plays a part in the outcome, and I think it did with us, because we just didn't generate the same energy flow as we did from Game 6.
You just brought up the word psychology, and you like that, because I remember we talked about goaltending at some point during that season, and you always talked about how you got to be really careful with the goaltenders, because if you got a hot goaltender and maybe cools down for a game or two, and you switch up and you bring in the other guy and he's flat, sometimes that other guy doesn't come back in with the same kind of intensity. And you always seem to like the psychology part of the game. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, for sure. And I would point to the job that Dave Tippett's done with the goalies this year.
Okay.
I mean, phenomenal. I haven't followed it as closely as you guys, I'm sure, but the way he's handled both those goalies has been incredible. And that's really underrated in terms of the importance of coaching, to give the goalies enough confidence and enough rope to get comfortable in the net and feel good about themselves. I think he's just done a great job in so many different areas, but the goaltending is one area I'd point to that's obvious.
Well, the thing is, Tip's a smart guy. You know that, Mac. You've coached against him and you've watched him coach. He's got two opposites in that crease. Mike Smith will battle you. He'll fight you. He'll do whatever you want. Dwayne Rolison was much the same way. Koskinen is cooler, a little more mechanical. The thing is, he's got confidence now, and they're not running him out there every game and wearing him out. Some guys can play 60 or 65 games. Mikko Koskinen hit the ditch when they started to ride him hard down the stretch. So he doesn't need to fix anything. It ain't broken goal.
That's what it looked like. Yeah, that's what it looked like to me too. He made a save last night to save the game. We were down 3-2. And they had an opportunity, a really good look to make it 4-2, and he made an unbelievable save, and we end up getting the win. So, I mean, obviously the lion's share of the credit goes to the goalies, but I really like the job Dave's done.
Craig, while we're sitting here chatting, the NHL have announced their 3 stars this week, and number 1 is Brad Marchand with the Boston Bruins, who had a great week. Connor McDavid is number 2. Brock Nelson of the Islanders is number 3. Leon Draisaitl is not getting enough attention by the league, in my estimation. Do you think he's being completely overlooked, and yet here he is leading the way he's leading?
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. I haven't followed the media as much, but I mean, it's pretty, what he's done, it really speaks for itself. I mean, he's an amazing player. He processes the game at a real elite level. Like, there's very few guys that I've ever coached or seen that will find guys on the ice that you don't see in the stands. I've got some experience in the game, so I can see the first and second and maybe the third option, but he'll, much like Wayne did. I mean, Wayne processed the game. It was just amazing the way he processed the game and the people that he saw. And Leon's, he maybe doesn't have as good a processor as Wayne, but it's close. And Wayne was so far ahead of anybody in my mind that's ever played the game in terms of the way he saw the ice. I remember one time he called too many men on the ice when he had the puck.
Yeah.
That told me everything I needed to know. Like, he was just counting bodies out there, and Leon has that ability. And the thing that I see with those two this year that I didn't see last year was their ability to create things in the offensive zone through the cycles and the support. And, and credit Cass too. If they can't find each other or they're both covered, they'll reboot it to Cass in behind the net, and he'll quickly protect it and give it to them as quickly as he can, which is credit to Cass. But they really support the puck, in my mind, better than they did last year, and they're very dangerous off the cycles. Last year, I thought it was more rush driven, and this year they've added that too, and that's really enhanced their effectiveness together.
Mac, before we let you go, I've got to ask you at least one question. Your ties to this city are obvious. Player, coach, manager. You're now going off to coach the Spengler Cup. The ties here are unmistakable. Now, I remember thinking you could end up back in Edmonton, even though you left before you came back and went on to become the GM. We were going to have coffee out in Kelowna, and you had to cancel. The thing is, you didn't tell me why you had to cancel, and you were on your way back to Edmonton to be unveiled as joining the club again. So nothing surprises me anymore. I had a good laugh over it. But here's my thought. You're a coach first and foremost. You want to stay busy. You've got the Spengler Cup coming. But these ties to Edmonton, Mac, is there any way, any chance, any situation that could see you back in Edmonton in a hockey ops capacity with this club, or is that a ship that sailed? I don't know. How do you feel about the possibilities?
I'd say remote. I think that I'm enjoying taking some time off now. You never say never in this game because you never really know, but I'd say those possibilities are remote. I've really enjoyed just being a fan. As I said earlier, much more than I thought, but certainly have a high regard for many members of the Oiler organization and the people that surround it. But I'd say remote.
Okay.
I have to ask one question I've always wanted to ask you, and I don't know if I was too scared before, and I've known you forever along with Robin.
Yeah.
If you could change, and when I saw it, I went, that's going to live forever. If you could change the Harvey the Hound episode, what would you have done differently?
Well, I would have done what Kevin Lowe told me after, that I should have just taken the tongue and put it in my lapel pocket and just folded it over. That's what I should have done instead of throwing it back.
Well,
but, my career is wrapped up into three events, that being one of them.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, watching it, the look on Billy Moore's face is absolutely classic. If you give it, and we'll be watching that one forever. But just watch Billy Moore's next time, and the reaction when you waved it around and threw it into the crowd was absolutely classic. It was just so much fun. Yeah. But
the thing I remember most about that was we lost the game. I'm mad, but I saw the clip, and it was hilarious after. So I'm coming out to address the media, and Terry Jones didn't get it. He didn't get it. And that's something that he'd be all over. And he kind of was looking at me like, okay, what's wrong here? What am I not getting? Because you're not as unhappy as you normally are when you lose. And he missed it. And that's something that I've never really talked to Terry about, but because I know he asked me a question like, why do you seem like you're not that angry about this game? I'm going, wow. I'm human too.
Yeah, that was classic. Yeah. Classic.
That was classic. Yeah.
Thanks for your time today. This has been outstanding, and good luck with Team Canada and everybody in Koff. You're going to have a blast over there in Switzerland at the Spengler Cup, and perhaps we can talk to you as the season starts to wind down over here and get your fan view on the Oilers as they head into the playoffs.
Good.
Because right now they're not going to stumble the way they're playing right now. I can't see it. I wasn't sure where they were going to end up, but right now I'm starting to feel really quite positive they're going to make it.
Nice jinx, Bryn. Way to go,
Sorry.
pal.
Yeah, we're all cautiously optimistic because we've seen a lot of worst case scenarios play out. But I just can't imagine that. I love the coach and the way that Leon and Connor, all of the goalies. It looks good to me.
Enjoy, Mac. Enjoy sitting in the cheap seats, having a look and having some fun. And hey, thanks a lot for joining us today, huh?
Okay, guys. No, my pleasure.
Pro-Am Sports is Edmonton's home for sports and entertainment memorabilia, featuring unique collectibles and apparel. We've got you and your fan cave covered. Pro-Am Sports, located in Edmonton at 12728 St. Albert Trail and proamsports.ca.
How's everything in Canmore?
Good. Good to get out of Calgary. It was nuts the last couple of days. It was unbelievable. The dressing room, I would imagine it's going to take them probably until February to get the stains out of the carpet.
What a surprise.
Joining us on the podcast today, legendary radio performer and what a community guy, Gerry Forbes joins us from Calgary.
It was great. You know what? Kudos to Edmonton because they had such a great crew putting that together last year that the CFL did the right thing and said, why don't we just take those people and move them down to Calgary and see if we can't make it even better. And having everything in one location down at Stampede Park, it was great because you had transit down there, a place where limos could drop people off. Nobody could drink and drive. It was just a huge party from tent to tent to tent. The Big Four hosted a bunch of great lunches when they honored Tony Spolatini as Man of the Year. And the fans came in droves from both Winnipeg and Hamilton.
Well, Gerry, one of the challenges for any host committee or any host city, when you don't have the home team in it, it can put a damper on things. But it sounds like because of good organization, the venue, everything went off without a hitch and was really good.
Well, it's funny, if you're not into the CFL like we are, and I know we're all big CFL fans, it almost looks like a cult because everybody's wearing their colors, everybody's having a party, everybody's shaking hands, and they could give a damn about the rest of the city. But I think that when all these people arrived, it really changed the vibe on Friday. Everything started to go nuts. Every party was packed. They had music for everybody. And how about that halftime show last night?
Yeah. Let's touch on that for a second because you've been in music radio forever. I'm at the point where CanCon, I understand the importance of helping Canadian artists get a leg up. But at the end of the day, this is a major, major event for our country. So why would you not get a major, major performer like Keith Urban to step up and perform? I don't know why people are so, and there's people down on it, and there's people like me. I think it was great.
I think it rivaled the Super Bowl. I thought the way they had that set up, their setup and tear down, how quickly they did that, how cool it looked, and then bringing in Carrie Underwood in a video was just simply unbelievable. Keith Urban, I didn't know I was such a fan until I started watching. Unreal.
Well, I tell you what, and here's another thing that adds to it. What was your sense of how people got behind, if they did, the Blue Bombers? I can't think of one person that had the Blue Bombers winning big. If anybody had the Bombers, it was, well, I think they can do it, Bombers by 3. It was virtually 9 out of 10 people thought Hamilton was going to run it up on them.
Well, you saw that team all year. They were the best team by far. And I think everybody, even running on Twitter, thinking with my head, I'm going Hamilton. Thinking with my heart, I'm going Blue Bombers. Mm-hmm. The Blue Bombers just steamrolled them. They were just possessed. And you could, I don't think I've ever seen a game at a Grey Cup that was that hard hitting. I don't think half those guys will be able to walk today.
It was pretty harsh. And really, when you take a look at, we can talk all we want about the season that the Hamilton Tiger Cats had, but the Blue Bombers, they did it the hard way. They had to go into Calgary and beat a very favored Stampeder team at McMahon Stadium, and then they had to go into Regina and knock off the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and they did that too. And I was wondering if they'd have enough gas left for the big game. And they did.
Got to be honest. I never thought either one of those things would happen, but it did remind me of when Calgary had that amazing season a couple of years back, and we were a super favorite in the Grey Cup, and then Toronto comes in and beats us.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Well, Gerry, one of the things I look for, I mean, the game matters. That's why you have the big party. But there were so many stories with that Bomber team, the quarterback situation, Collaros and Strevler. Then there was the Andrew Harris situation, which was a little bit controversial. He came and he played like he was mad and had something to prove. And then on the human side, there's the Richie Hall story. He comes down from the booth, peels off his headset, pulls on his hoodie, and goes down to celebrate just a few weeks after losing his brother. There were a lot of storylines in this one.
It really was from day one. I mean, think about Zach Collaros, the guy that was kicked to the curb because of concussions, right? Mm-hmm. And then sent to all those different teams, ended up back in Toronto with 5 quarterbacks on the roster. And you got to think, okay, my career's over. And then boom, this changes in the storybook fashion it did. And he goes on like, boy, he's going to be a free agent now too. Who's going to sign him? Well, Winnipeg spend the money? We'll have to find out.
You're very plugged in with what's going on with the Stampeders. What is going on with the Stampeders? How do you see things moving forward? We know one thing. If Huff is around, they're always going to be competitive. It's a team that's always close and have been for the last 20 years. But what about the quarterback?
Good question. I mean, it's funny. People jump on and off the bandwagon with Bo Levi Mitchell. I don't know. He's still a great quarterback. He had a rough game where he threw 3 interceptions. It happens, right? Yeah. But our backup, of course, is also going into free agency, and he wants to play. He wants to start somewhere, and he probably will. So we'll be looking for another backup guy, right? But Huff always brings in 4 or 5 great guys.
The other thing, too, about Bo, he's done something no other Stampeder quarterback's done. He's won 2 Grey Cups, correct?
Yes, and great in the community. People really like him on the team. His teammates like him. I think Bo's sticking around, but we'll need a backup. We made a couple good acquisitions towards the end of the season on defense too. So we'll be competitive, but I think the league will be like it was this year. You don't know who's going to win it.
We will give you some time now to run out and get a couple of Keith Urban CDs or download on Spotify. And just before we let you go, because you've stepped away after doing so many great years in radio, not only in Calgary, you were in Edmonton for a while, you were down east, but you've been great in the community. You brought up Tony Spallettini and all the great job that they do in the community. Are you still able to stay active now that you've kind of stepped away from the mic?
Well, I think what I'm going to do when I leave here is head back to Calgary and go get another carpet cleaner and help that guy McMahon clean the dressing room.
Hey, Gerry, thanks for your time today in Canmore. We appreciate it. It's nice where you can get away from the city for a little bit of a break, and we'll talk again sometime soon, my friend.
Cheers, boys, and go Oilers.
Fresh air and fun. Experience it all this summer in a new RV from Carefree RV. Trade up to the perfect bunk model from reputable brands like Winnebago and Forest River. So many floor plans and payments starting at just $53 bi-weekly. Plus, 1 free year of CoachNet warranty on all RVs. Carefree RV open 7 days a week in Edmonton and Leduc. Online, carefreerv.ca. Carefree.
Big thank you to Craig MacTavish and also Gerry Forbes for joining us on this edition of The Outsiders. Hey, that's it for today. That was, I got to say one thing. I'm shocked that Craig MacTavish gave us that much time to talk today.
You know what? It was kind of nice because more than once we would sit around the rink when for him as a coach, the whiteboard wasn't around.
Yeah.
For me, the notepad wasn't around, and we just talk hockey, and we talk we'd talk beyond the game itself, and he was always happy to sit around and shoot the breeze. He's a smart guy. He's an interesting guy. It was terrific to get that much time from him today.
Also, I enjoyed chatting with Gerry in Calgary /Canmore because, oh my God, how many times was I on his show? back in the day. It was just nice to check in with him a little bit. He's got a lot of pride in the city of Calgary, and he should.
Yes.
One of the things about, I never really worried about the party in Calgary, Grey Cup week. They had gotten over the shock of not having their team in it at the semifinal level, not the Western final. And so the moment everybody started to come to their town, the one thing that, having lived in Calgary for a few years, fans are always like to show everybody a good time, and that's exactly what happened this time around. So it's nice to check in with Gerry. Coming up here as we now head into the month of December, a couple of things. One, we're going to have a best of show coming up. You're going to love some of the interviews that we've done. We've taken some snippets out of the interviews we've done over the last 3 months, and we're going to have that put together for you. That'll run over the Christmas season. Coming up this next month, we're going to chat with our friend TJ, Terry Jones, longtime writer in Edmonton, and he has seen it all. Is that fair to say? Is that an understatement or an overstatement?
No, that's on the money, Bryn. Jonesy has seen it all, and
yes.
He's written it all, and sooner or later...
And he's created some of it.
Yes, and if we look long enough, we may find a Hall of Fame that he's not in.
There's that as well. He's pretty much covered the bucket list when it comes to sporting events he's wanted to cover, so we'll chat with him. Also going to track down Brian Mudryk, who is the television voice of the Montreal Canadiens. We haven't gone that far. We've gone to Toronto on a couple of occasions, but we've not gone down to Montreal to find out what's happening with the Habs. We've also checked in. Well, actually, you know what? We did go a little further. We chatted with AJ Jakubic not long ago in Ottawa, but we're going to go to Montreal sometime over the next little while, and lots of great guests coming up as well.
Oh, absolutely. Going to be fun, man.
Absolutely. Don't forget, you can email us at mightymouth@shaw.ca. We'll get back to you. If you want to email us and you have any questions or maybe a guest suggestion or two, please tell us. Also, here's a huge thing. Tell your friends that we're here. It's real simple. Just subscribe or hit the RSS feed, and that way, anytime we have a new podcast out on any of your favorite ear candy sites or platforms, you'll know about it. So, Robin, that's it for today.
See you next time, pal.
Absolutely. Looking very much forward to it.
Was recorded earlier because we were ashamed to do it now.